Hi, Nora.
Hi, Carlotta.
I'm so excited to have this time with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very happy to get to spend this time with you and all of your audience as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So I want to introduce you as you're so many things to many people. You're a channel and a very powerful voice and such a grounded and clear presence in our day, and an incarnate guide, as you yourself have coined the term. And I really love that you tackle really, big issues, social issues, and, you've been so supportive in the last couple of years with everything that's been going on. And
thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, it can't have been easy. But also, I really love that you, at the end of the day, like, your message is to transform through love, right? And to really use the power of love in this day and age to alchemize what we're going through, this big transformation we're going through. So should we start from there? It's kind of a big question, but what are we going through? Like, how are we finding ourselves integrating now everything that's happened, and the 3D and 5D aspect as well of our human situation?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. What the hell are we going through now, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it feels so massive. It's like everywhere we turn, there's something to look at. It feels to me like maybe I feel like that's a good place to start as far as for each of us individually. I think it used to be really easy to check out. And things were happening sporadically, and now it's everything all at once, all the time. None of us really have the ability to turn away from any of it any longer, because I can turn my head away from politics and I can turn right here to a school shooting that happened just a few days ago, right? Or I'll turn away from that. Oh, now I'm looking at a 2-year-long pandemic, right? And there's just Russia invading Ukraine, right? All these things piling onto the rights being taken away from our most vulnerable communities. Discussion about anti-abortion, right? It's just endless, and none of that seems spiritual, right? When we talk about spirituality. And my belief is that everything is spiritual. We're all love incarnate. Everything we deal with has a spiritual component to it because we are of spirit. This is who we are. So I don't think we can separate out any longer world events and politics from spirituality. I think we used to be able to do that. So I guess this is where we'll start, right? In the shift, we cannot separate out any longer any of it. We have to acknowledge that we are affected by every single thing that is happening, as we are also affecting every single thing that is happening, both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you say that, because I really believe that there's a way to integrate our multidimensionality in a way that's really relevant and grounded, and it's not about escaping our bodies.
Yes.
Into the spiritual realm.
It's interesting. The first time I heard the term ascension was, of course, as a little girl in church. I was raised Catholic.
Wow. Oh, yes, I can relate.
Jesus ascended, right? What does that mean? Jesus left this planet.
Yes.
If you believe that story, right? If you believe the Christian mythology and the Catholic mythology.
Right.
So then the term ascension started coming up. I heard it again then in the late 90s, in 1996, in reference to the New Age community and the spiritual community. And I thought, ascension, we're moving into a higher state of being within ourselves and our collective realities and our bodies and our structures. We're shifting from the inside out. We're not going anywhere. But I think a lot of people hear the term ascension, and the picture they paint is very tied to those religious belief systems where they start to think, oh, well, I'm going to go to this higher, good 5D Earth reality, right? And well, the people who don't want to, or the people who haven't done their work, they're going to stay in the shitty 3D Earth reality. And that's okay, because I'll be in 5D, so I won't have any feelings about that any longer, right?
Right.
I had someone tell me recently she was so afraid that she was going to go to 5D and her husband and children were going to be stuck in the third dimension. And God, that really hit home for me, like how sociopathic some of those ideas can sound and be, right? So my understanding of what's happening is that we're in the process of, I don't even want to say integrating any longer, because I don't really think that's even true. I used to think it was that. Now it feels to me like we are activating from within our own higher selves / fifth dimensional consciousnesses, and we are sharing our bodies with our third dimensional and fifth dimensional consciousnesses at the same time. So there's this collaboration occurring between our ego identities, which are beautiful and rich and filled with emotion and creative expression and sexual experiences and physical experiences, right? Like the 3D is all about this. And then we get to bring in from within the fifth dimensional perspective that we're all one, that we're love incarnate, that we are not separate from source or one another or the planet itself, that we are all the same energy collaborating collectively together.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, this sounds so good to my system. Yeah. And yeah, we do talk a lot about like life force energy and sexuality in this community. And I've been wondering, where do you see our children? How have you seen any changes in the I suppose children and teenagers, and what can we do to support them and their life force energy restoration?
Yeah, I love that question. So the story I tell when I'm channeling, and that I've now taken into my consciousness, so I tell then as Nora, but I frame it this way, the story I tell, because one of the things I've remembered throughout my decades of channeling and healing work is that there is no ultimate truth, that we can't know the ultimate truth from the third dimensional perspective, right? So I do my best to give supporting, loving information that feels truthful to me in the moment. And yet I don't claim that it is the ultimate truth. So to me, even my own work is becoming more kind of mythological in its origins, right? I give a mythology around ET interactions with us. And if that resonates for you, great. Yeah. But if it becomes dogma for you, then that becomes problematic, right? And then it just becomes another form of religion. And then all the power and control issues come up. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So my story that I'm telling right now is on the winter solstice of 2012. We ended a contracted experience here on planet Earth collectively and shifted into this experience of actualizing our fifth dimensional identities, higher selves from within, which means that anyone born after the winter solstice of 2012, so all of our children since then, have come in with a greater sense of knowing that they are source, they are love incarnate, and don't have to go through the process of forgetting that you and I had to go through, Carlotta.
Oh, I love that.
Very different experience. Now, of course, all of these children are impacted by the adults in their lives and the belief systems that the adults carry and what the adults support and what the adults cause them to start to suppress and repress. Right. So that's all still going to happen, right? But what's different is they don't have to forget like you and I did, right? We had to forget to play the game. and then at some point started to remember. They don't have to. They can stay connected to the truths, which means they understand that they are whole beings. Really, I don't think genderless is really the exact right term, but it gives us a picture, an understanding. They're fluid.
I love that. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
And in their sexuality as well. Although, we're not encouraging, of course, children to have sex, right? That's not what I'm talking about here, but an understanding of their own creative energy and sexual energy and how they identify sexually and who and what they're attracted to, right? What forms, what gender forms, that's all much more fluid for these generations coming in now, this generation, in part because they're whole beings, right? So whole beings are not heterosexual, because that doesn't work in a whole being. Now, you can still prefer heterosexual sex, fantastic, but it's easier to understand and recognize if your preference is for someone identifying as female to be with someone identifying as female, right? It's easier to do that when you know yourself to be love incarnate and whole being. Okay, excuse me. One moment. Teddy is knocking at my door. Teddy, come on. Here he comes. Aww. He's going to just jump on the couch and pass out behind me.
Teddy.
Yes, so I see that. Then I also see with these beings who are, children and adolescents and teens, they're a lot more intuitive, more connected to their emotions, have an easier and freer time recognizing and expressing their emotions. So I think this is all part of this shift as well. Right. And then I think also the understanding of they're neurologically diverse and how we as adults are shifting a lot of our belief systems around those ways of operating in our neural pathways and saying, oh, maybe there's not one standard. Maybe there's not one regular way of operating. Perhaps there are many pathways that we can all operate neurologically. Then this allows those who are coming in that are umbrellaed under the autism umbrella, which is huge, right? That's a huge umbrella term that's being used, I think, to right. capture many different kinds of neurological processes. I think this is all part of the shift as well. It's, yes, we're a vast universe here, and all of that information from all across the universe is available to us all, and it's coming in via these children coming in who are operating perhaps slightly differently from the way you and I operate.
Right, and they're so open, and sometimes this means in some ways they need more support and guidance.
Absolutely.
And
yes,
we can step up as well.
Yes.
And be those guides and, priestesses and mothers and fathers in their lives, then the more they can navigate this quite tricky terrain in some ways, just because it's just so, it can be very intense. And
absolutely.
Is what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Especially because our beliefs are changing so rapidly collectively, right? Like when I was younger, autism was something to be cured, right? It was a disease. It was something to be cured and fixed. And now the general understanding or the recognition, I mean, there are still those who think that way, but there's a greater sense of acceptance of, autism and different ways of operating neurologically and the behaviors associated. These are things to be understood, to meet with. And I think what's so fascinating, I work with a lot of parents who have kids who are on the spectrum in one-on-one sessions and, in group work too. And one of the things that's often said is that these beings are coming in with just a bit of a higher vibration, a higher frequency. And our work is not to try to get them to conform to our vibration and our frequency. It's to raise our own and meet them where they're at.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I've always been curious with disclosure happening, like more and more, it's already happened and it's happening more and more. How do we prepare our, because I feel like they're also coming in because they're at a different vibration and they can meet what's eventually, I think, going to unfold in the next
whenever
2 decades. I don't know. It's already happened, but I don't know how long it's going to take. But I always have great hope in them, you know, that they can somehow turn things around also by communicating with our extraterrestrial friends in a different way.
I think that is a possibility. Absolutely. That the telepathic communication there is very high and very activated, right? So that's one of the things that you and I forgot when we hit probably the age of 5, right? That's about when full on integration into the physical body. I'm here as a human. I'm going to forget my identity as a whole being, right? So telepathy and those kinds of things tend to really wane at that point for you and me. It's not true for these kids coming in now, which means that they're more open to that kind of contact. And yet they also still need adults around them helping them to understand it, just as we need to listen to what they're saying and not project an understanding onto them based on our own experience. And this is where things get tricky as a parent, right? How do you support a being moving through something that you don't have tactical experience with yourself, right? Because you don't just want to say, oh, that's just your imagination, right? That's the shit you and I heard when we were younger. So you want to support it. So I think we're going to see a lot more support coming up, and it started already, right? Some of the work you're doing, and then there are others. I think there'll be more and more support as these kids, well, continue to come in, continue to be born as the beings they are here as teachers and guides, and yet they're still children with developing emotions and developing intellects. So they still need parenting and support as well. It's very tricky when the guides come in as children. Yes.
Oh, could I ask you a personal question in the sense of how did you start channeling yourself? How did you get onto this journey?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think I was maybe 20 years old the first time I had a tarot reading. So yes, I was raised Catholic, and then my mom got divorced. My parents got divorced. My mom got remarried. So when she got remarried, she was excommunicated. Oh. She couldn't take communion any longer. She could still go to mass, but not take communion. And she was very devout Catholic, right? Went to Catholic boarding school. She was very religious. So watching that happen was really angering for me. I didn't really, and I was old enough to understand it, and yet didn't really understand it. Thought that was really kind of an arbitrary rule being done basically to punish women. Right? That was my sense of it at the time. So I was like 11 at the time. And so I didn't have to go to church anymore. So then I started to ask other questions and kind of try to seek other pieces of information. And then when I was 18, I saw the movie Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks. Have you seen that?
No.
Defending Your Life? Oh, it's fantastic. It's all about reincarnation, and it's about what happens in the in-between space between lifetimes. And it's very funny. Meryl Streep's in it. It's a fantastic movie. So at 18, I'm watching this movie about reincarnation. It's a comedy, but it's also very heart-centered. And I was like, that's my belief system, right? So I'd never seen something portrayed that I'd already been working on in my own consciousness. And that just started to open me up more and more. And then tarot cards came in when I was 20, and then crystals. I started doing tarot readings at parties at the restaurant I was working at when I was in my mid-20s. And then in 1996, so I was 29 at the time, I just went through some personal things that were difficult, which is very common at that age. That's our first Saturn return in astrology. So it's a big life change moment. And I was hanging out with a friend one night, and she mentioned this woman who has contact with her spirit guide, and she channels. And I'd been looking for something, and I didn't really know what it was. And when she said that, I said, oh, that's the thing that I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, or I want to be doing. Really, it was that I wanted to be doing. So I said, let's do it. Let's talk to our guides. So we both just quieted ourselves, and within really a very short amount of time, I felt the presence of a being. And it was not the first time I'd had contact. I'd had a visit from my dead grandmother, and I had seen other things, right? But this was the first time I had very clear connection with another being. The other things always seemed random, like events I would stumble into. This was just an incredibly powerful experience of connection and love. An unconditional love that I'd not felt as Nora before. I'd never felt loved like that before as this person. And it was a short moment of just that love and his presence. And I knew he was presenting as male, and I knew his name started with an M. And meanwhile, my friend Amy was having her own experience with her guide. And what she'd been reaching for suddenly was very clear for her as well. And I went home just a completely different person that night. It was very similar to what I hear when people have near-death experiences. When I hear them share about that very rapid shift in their consciousness when they return, it was like that for me. I left my apartment as, just a 29-year-old girl struggling to find her way in the world. And I returned feeling completely connected, consciousness expanded, started to access all my past life records, started to access healing energy and run it through my body, right? So I'm waitressing and like, oh, you have a headache, let me fix that for you. Right? And getting psychic information about all the people I was waiting on, and it was not easy. It was really cool and fun and wild, but not easy. I was not grounded. I was way like out, so much so I had to be sent home from work one night because none of the computers would work for me. None of the credit card machines would work for me. I sat down on the floor in the back hallway. My boss was like, what is happening? I said, I need to go home. And he was like, okay. And just sent me home with no question. And then I realized, oh, okay. I gotta get grounded. Right. And then that,
the integration process.
Yes. I got to stay in my body and figure out how to weave all of that into my day-to-day experience so I can still function as an earthling while at the same time experience that connection. And I would say that took me really about a year and a half. And then it was at that point that I started working professionally as a channel.
That's amazing. And then the Pleiadians started to come in.
Yes, they actually came in almost immediately. I had my experience with Mirando, my main guide, in November of 1996. And then the Pleiadians showed up within a matter of days. I was handed the book Bringers of the Dawn by Wendy Kennedy, friend, Pleiadian channel, right? So she gave me that book and said, you need to read this. And as soon as I read it, I could feel that resonance with that Pleiadian vibration and began to work with them then. Yes.
Beautiful. Do you have any suggestions for people who are just starting out maybe, or who are having big openings even?
Yes. So one, if you're just starting out and you desire to experience connection, you don't have to have any special abilities. You don't have to have any training or practice. This is something that is available to all of us. What you do have to have is a willingness to suspend your disbelief. You have to be able to say, yes, this is really happening. And even though my third dimensional mind might want to question it, I'm not going to let that questioning happen right now. I'm going to run it through my heart and have the experience. And the heart chakra is essential in this. We don't channel from our brains, right? It's not our mental bodies that enable us to do this, or really much of any kind of expanded consciousness work. It all comes through the heart chakra first. And then the mental body just organizes the data and the information and helps us then put it into words and thought forms and ideas and language, right?
Yeah.
And understanding. But the mental body can also act as a limiter, because the mental body sometimes has to catch up, right?
Yeah.
Like my mental body didn't know who the hell the Pleiadians were, right? I had to see that first and experience it energetically for my mental body to say, oh, okay, we're having telepathic contact with light beings that identify as Pleiadian. Fine.
A run of the mill thing to do. Yeah.
For those of you having big experiences, those of you that are already having them, enjoy them, embrace them, but don't let them distract you away from the beauty of Earth, the beauty of your human form, the beauty of this reality. You know, I see a lot, and I felt this myself when I first started channeling and started to play with terms like light worker and star seed. I was like, ooh, I'm special, right?
Yes.
Like more special, right? Like, oh yeah, everyone is special, but I'm more special.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
No, that's a problem. this is not healing or heart-centered. That's
Bring it
just
back. Yeah.
ego superiority. And look, we all want to feel special, right? And we are. We are all special, but none of us need to be more special than anyone else. And there's an unfortunate amount of that, I think, being expressed right now in our community, the New Age community and the wellness community. And, it sits in the shadows. I think most people don't recognize even when they're running it. So I think for those of you having big experiences already, have a look at that as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we are here to be of service to one another and this world. And I know for myself, the more humbled I am, in a very true way. To me, that's just very heart-centered. I desire to be of service. End of story, right? The more things flow for me. It's interesting, you use the term incarnate guide, which is something, somebody said that to me years ago. Oh, you're an incarnate guide. And I couldn't really even use that for myself initially, because for me, I felt like, one, who am I to apply that term to myself? And then two, well, yeah, of course I'm an incarnate guide, but like, whatever, I'm not saying that out loud. Like, that's just for me to know about me. Now what I understand is, oh, we're all incarnate guides, every single one of us. So now I can freely apply that term to me, to you, to Teddy, my sweet pooch, right? We are all incarnate guides here.
I love that. Yes, I know you do teach that, and it's beautiful. I really appreciate it. But just bringing it back to the shadow that you mentioned that's in our communities, and given that we have a Catholic background, both of us, I'm Italian, grew up in Italy in a very staunch Catholic background. But what is happening nowadays with I'm seeing a lot of people who are in the New Age community really go deep into finding Jesus, let's say, and suddenly it becoming this like fire and brimstone thing where crystals are to be thrown to the bottom of a lake. Suddenly everything is like evil, and they're doing exorcisms. I don't like, where does that come from? That seems like such a polarized point of view. I don't know if you've come across this.
I've come across it a little bit, and I'm aware of a very, famous author who took that journey herself, right?
Yes.
Although, if you listen to that person's work, it was always there.
Interesting.
So from my perspective, what's happening for all of us is any of our unhealed trauma, untended to wounds and hurts are being activated right now. And people react to their wounds and traumas in a huge spectrum of ways. And one of them is exactly the way you're talking about. I don't run into it too often myself personally. It sounds like you're having more of an experience with this than I am. Sorry. My whole thing was, sitting in shock as the New Agers were running into QAnon. Right?
Oh.
Running. That was my version of it.
Okay.
The conspiracy crowd, and suddenly supporting fascism as a 5D ideology. Like, what the? Right?
Oh, that's interesting. How did that come about?
I think part of the issue for all of us is one of the things that we're doing right now is we're not just tending to unhealed trauma from this life, but we're tending to unhealed trauma from any incarnation we've ever had. Yeah. Things that we just couldn't manage in those lives. So in a lot of lives, we had shit happen and we dealt with it, right? We cleared it, we healed it. But then there are some lives where, well, we just weren't able to do that work. So a lot of that data, a lot of all of that is bleeding through right now. And it's bleeding through personalities. Right. So every one of us have had some form of past life bleed through at one time or another, where we suddenly feel, maybe like a super strong connection to somebody, and then just overwhelmed by feelings for that person who maybe is completely inappropriate for us at this moment in our lives. It
happens to me all the time. As bleed throughs are very intense for me.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the bleed throughs are meant to facilitate a deeper level of healing. Often, though, we get attached to the person or the story, and we start to think, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, well, no, really, you're supposed to look at your own shadow and ask yourself why it is you would believe in something like an exorcism after doing years of work taking in information that's completely counter to that, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So I think it's just this. I was thinking about our talk earlier today, and I was thinking about Atlantis and Lemuria, and how I actually wore my Larimar, which connects me to Atlantis, and how so much of what we're experiencing right now is kind of a parallel to what happened right before the fall of Atlantis, during the fall of Atlantis, I should say, which was a long process. That did not happen in a day or a year or even a decade. My memories tell me it took longer than that for the Atlantean civilization to work itself into a place where they ripped apart their ideologies. And some of what you're talking about, right, in that fundamentalism. And I think that's really what you're talking about. Yeah. Excuse me now. Apparently, Teddy doesn't like this part of the conversation. Teddy's like, I'm out of here. The fundamentalist beliefs, that occurred on Atlantis. And fundamentalism typically happens as a response to fear. Mm-hmm. So the Atlantean civilization became very afraid, by and large, that terrible things were going to happen, and then ran to either their religious beliefs, their scientific beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, whatever the belief was, and believed their belief was the one, right, the ultimate, which completely fragmented the society and the structure. And if you're going to look at things from an energetic place, well, that just created tears and rips all over the place, which resulted then in a physical destruction of a continent. So now, today, I don't see that we're replaying it. I see that we've ended. We've started, basically, where that ended. We're at the most polarized, fragmented.
Yeah.
As a way to recognize we need to reunify. We need to weave the yin and yang back together. Exactly. Science and spirituality need to work hand in hand. If you want to have a religious belief system, well, that's fantastic, but it's not the be all and end all. There's nothing that is the be all and end all, right? So I think there are some people just stuck in the memory of the fragmentation, and they're running into these extremist beliefs. And that was QAnon, basically. QAnon is an extreme fed extreme far-right belief systems that feed fascism. Fascism always arises when the population is afraid and they want one daddy in charge telling everyone what to do.
Agreed. That's what happened in Italy with Mussolini years ago.
Germany with Hitler. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. But I too have relaxed a little bit around, this understanding that first AI for me was just bad in some way. I went through a phase where it's like, no, we have to do this ascension organically, and maybe AI doesn't have a place in that. But I'm starting to realize that we really do need to work together.
Yes,
we really do. And there are many civilizations, I believe, that do work together, or like that have perhaps even done it successfully.
Agreed. Yes. In other realities, other star systems, that's occurred, and even on this world, just either ancient history that we cannot access or small pockets of realities and civilizations that we're just not in touch with. Yeah, I feel like COVID really, the period of time of COVID really brought a lot of this to light, and the need for collaboration between all of our communities, all of them, right? And I think there's some of it happening, and then there's still a lot of dogma, right? There's still a lot of those in the New Age community just outright rejecting third dimensional science as dangerous or bad or wrong. And then there are many in the scientific community outright rejecting, things that they can't yet explain scientifically. But then there are those who embrace it. There are those who, I was thinking about Carl Sagan this morning. You familiar with Carl Sagan's work? He was astrophysicist, and he was a scientist, and yet he wrote the book Contact. So if you've seen the film Contact, that's based on Carl Sagan's work. And he had such a strong desire and belief that there was life out there and that magic existed, right? And he spent a lot of his life kind of walking that line between science and things that science cannot yet explain. I was just thinking about him this morning. I mean, he definitely, by the end of his life, because he'd not been able to scientifically prove any of it, he kind of rejected a lot of those more spiritual beliefs, and even gave a prediction about the kind of moment we have found ourselves in now, where we're out of balance. There are too many people right now running to beliefs that are not at all grounded in any kind of third dimensional reality. And that is not healthy. That doesn't mean you're more highly evolved. It just means you're disassociated from your body and this world. Yeah.
Oh, that's really profound. Yeah, it is. We need to start bringing it in a little bit, and getting the message out there.
Yes. I mean, after I started channeling, I lived for a long time half out, wanting to go somewhere better, right? It wasn't until I really focused on accessing and activating the energy of my higher self from within my own body that I really landed here as Nora fully, and began to recognize just the incredible beauty on this world and the joy of being here. And at that point, I didn't want to be anywhere else. I don't want to be anywhere else. And the Pleiadians are constantly reminding us that this us right now is the highest version of us, because this is where we're at. This is it. And I love that. That brings me tremendous comfort and empowers me. Right? That allows me to go further in my work. Then I'm not seeking it's not carrot in front of the horse, right? So much of I think the New Age, so much of this reality, corporate reality is, carrot in front of the horse. You keep going, plodding along, and one day you'll get there.
Yeah, that's really profound. It's such an important reminder. And Earth is so beautiful. I want to enjoy every minute here.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Nora.
Oh, thank you.
So should we be hopeful then for in the future, for the next few years, or can we expect some more years of healing?
Greetings. This is the Pleiadian Collective. It is wonderful to be here with you all today. We're going to take this one. Nora could have answered, but she could feel us wanting to link up and come through. So everybody right now, just first tune in to yourself, take a breath. As you inhale and exhale, just allow yourself to be and feel exactly as you are right now, without judgment. Some of this discussion may have activated things in you or triggered things or enlightened you about certain things about yourself, given you understanding. So just let yourself take this moment to heal and connect and integrate anything that you can as you breathe. All right, to answer that question. So we see the next couple of years are still going to provide many opportunities for transformation, change, healing, right? You're in a period of transformation. The more you all accept this, okay, this is where my attention needs to go on a regular basis, the easier this period of time is going to be for you, the easier it is going to be for you to notice opportunities when they present for good for you in your lives and support, right? The more you release your attachments to who you think you're supposed to be right now, what it is you think you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to be making money, on and on and on, right? The more you really pull yourself present and connect with the imperative need for healing. And it's an imperative running through the collective right now, the need for healing. So that's for the individual and then for the collective. The more you do this, the easier things will go for you individually. Then as bigger things happen, you'll say, okay, this is part of this healing process. And that doesn't mean we're celebrating suffering, because you're also all moving out of a loop of suffering where you're moving into an understanding that you don't need to suffer to grow, which you don't. You got stuck there on your world. You've been stuck in suffering and trying to use suffering as a motivational tool for growth, both individually and then collectively. And suffering simply begets more suffering. That's all it ever does. That's all it brings, is more suffering. It is love that is the foundation for growth and the tool for growth. So that's something also to notice in yourself. Are you still trying to frame your suffering as good? Instead, maybe have a look at it and just say, yeah, that sucked. And I'm not who I am because I suffered. Well, I'm who I am in spite of my suffering, right? So as these ideas come more and more into the general consciousness, and as you move out of this loop of suffering, and so this is going to be a few years still. And we don't really like to predict, but we don't want to tell you, it's all going to be great soon, because from our perspective, yes, it can be great in any moment for any of you. And yet the big shift is underway. So as this really starts to come up, and as these children that are coming in, not stuck in a loop of suffering, coming in with a different blueprint for incarnation, saying, hey, we can just skip to joy. We don't have to hurt before we get to joy. Then those solutions founded in joy will begin to present.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So our teachers, our little teachers, will show us how to operate from joy.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, Nora, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Carlotta. Thank you so much for having me on and for sharing me and my work with all of your wonderful, wonderful community. Thank you.
You're so welcome. It's our pleasure. I'm sure they will be absolutely thrilled. These are such important conversations. So thank you for your clarity and groundedness and all around beauty. Thank you. Okay. I'll speak to you soon. Maybe bump into you in town again.
Yes, I know. How fantastic to get to do a podcast with someone local. I love it. I'm headed to the farmer's market now.
Oh, sounds lovely.
Yes.
Oh, yes, the best. My son will be there.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, thank you so much, Nora.
Thank you, Carlotta. Much love.
Much love. Bye-bye.